Right guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. So in today's video I'll be going over how you guys can trade supply and demand in 2022. Now as you guys know that the market conditions are always changing, and it's very important for us to be able to adapt to these market conditions and remain profitable. So today I'll be giving you my approach on how I trade supply and demand, and I hope that it can benefit some of you guys. Right, so jumping over to the charts. Here I have an example on US 30 where you can look for supply and demand zones over here. But before I go through that example and break it down for you, let's just quickly cover the theory for anyone that doesn't know what supply and demand really is. So supply and demand comes down to two levels of importance. So you will have your supply level and you will also have your demand level at the bottom. So it's important to remember that supply levels are at the top and demand levels are at the bottom. So in a supply and demand scenario, what you can expect to happen is price will probably be in an uptrend as such, and then price comes back into your level of demand where you can then look to buy the market to form higher highs like so. And then in a supply level, the opposite would be true where you're in a downtrend and then price comes back into your level of interest, which will be your supply level in this case, where you can then look for a rollover pushing further down into the lows over here like so. Now this is a very simple example, but this is the basics of what supply and demand is. Now to give an example of supply and demand in the markets over here, you can see on US 30 straight away this level over here would be our level of supply where you can look to buy off this level over here. Now the reason I've highlighted this level is because this was the shift in trend. So currently from this level over here we was in a downtrend. As you can see, we've been coming and melting down. We had this retracement to then see a further push down. So at this level over here we was in a downtrend, and then finally once volume kicked in, we broke this structure to then change trends and be in an uptrend. So at this point over here, this is what I could see happening in the market. So if price comes back into this region over here, this will be our level of demand which we can look to buy off of. Now it's very important to highlight the fact that I've drawn my zone from the body of the opposite candle before we get that break of structure. And the reason I'm drawing it from the body and not the wicks is because majority of the volume is sitting within the bodies over here. Wicks can also act as manipulation or just fake outs, so it's very important to be drawing these zones from the bodies. But also it is also important to be taking into account these wicks over here, because it can be something to bear in mind, especially in my strategy. But just to keep things simple, let's just draw our zones from the opposite candle before the break of structure. So the reason it would be this candle because this is the last candle before we see this level being broken over here. And this, as you can see, would have played out beautifully where you could look to buy off several times over here. To give you another example of a supply level this time, you can see that we're in this downtrend, a huge push down, and then we see this retracement before another push down breaking these lows. Now it's very important to bear in mind that we need a few things to happen. We need this low to be broken, and then we also need this opposite candle before the push down to be the zone where we draw our zone from. So if I use this tool, it will be the last candle body, and then you drag it across, and you can see even in this case, although it wasn't the strongest of reactions, we can get some sort of reaction off of this level to capitalize off, especially on a lower time frame with tight stops. You can definitely get a nice risk to reward off of this trade alone as well. Now we've discussed where exactly to draw these zones, we now want to follow up on why we're choosing these candles over here. And this comes back to, which I've always been talking about, is structure. So if you go back in the past to give you some more examples and highlight the structure, you can see that if we're just following along what price is doing, it was in a downtrend, and then we finally broke this level over here. So currently at this moment of time, we was in an uptrend where we're forming higher highs and higher lows. So this will be your swing low point, and this is where prices come back up to. Now straight away you will know that this would be your level of demand we can look to take buys off of. and again you would use the last opposite candle. Since this candle is very tiny, you can use the one next to it, which would be this one. It doesn't really matter as long as it's covering this candle as well, which it is. So again, you can look to take buys off this level of demand over here. As you can see, another clean, clear setup. We can look to buy off of this level several times over here before we finally do break this level over here. So again, it comes down to structure and understanding structure to be able to highlight which zones you want to choose. And once you've highlighted the zone, I've told you how you can exactly draw these zones on from the bodies. And another way to really understand why I'm using the bodies and not the wicks is once we use this volume profile tool over here, and we just take into account this impulse over here, you can see that even the majority of the volume is sitting in between these candles over here. It's not sitting at the wicks all the way down below here, nor is it sitting at the highs over here. It's right in the middle. That's exactly where you draw that range from. But it's also important to take into the wicks, like I said, because price can spike below before rejecting back up into higher highs. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and it was a bit informative for you guys. If you have any questions, do drop in the comment section below. This was just a quick guide on how you guys can trade supply and demand, and if you did enjoy it, make sure to subscribe.